Hey, my name's Jonathan, and I'm a veteran.
Hi, my name is Daryl, and I'm a veteran.
My name is Chad, and I'm a veteran.
Hey, I'm Travis. I'm an Air Force veteran.
Hi, my name's Ashley, and I'm a veteran.
Hello, everybody. Happy Sunday. I'm Carolee, and I am your host with Conversations with a Vet. Thank you, everybody, showing up tonight. Those who may listen later on the recording, appreciate you being here. I know, Jason, I see you out there. Thank you. So hopefully everybody's gearing up before the holidays. Go ahead and put out there in the chats for me what it is you guys have planned. You're going to go see family, you sticking around the house. I can say without a doubt, we're going to be sticking around the house this year, and it's just going to be kind of a small one. So that, which is fine. It's kind of nice every once in a while to do it, a little bit at a time and not have to worry about trying to get everybody situated with rooms, etc. So, but I'm going to miss all the grandbabies. So that's always the downside to that. So I have a wonderful guest waiting in the wings, and I am excited to introduce him. And of course, he is a Marine veteran. So as you all know, Marines are very near and dear to my heart since I have 2 Marine veterans myself. So please help me welcome Samuel Deeds. Hello, hello.
Hello, how are you doing?
Good. How are you this evening? It's evening. I'm in the basement. I don't even know what it
Yeah, no, I get it. No, I'm good. Yeah, I did some a distillery tour earlier with one of my friends, and then came back home, and my wife was painting our master, so I had to join in and help her doing that because I just couldn't let her do it herself, right?
Aw, that's sweet. I know. My husband today, he helped. Actually, he did it. I just kind of stood there and supervised, but got a lot of things done for the house today. So we've got the super gringo out there. Thank you for showing up tonight. Appreciate you. He's going to be eating beef, rice, and beans and wondering what everyone's saying about him. He's not paranoid.
Not at all.
Jason says, he says, ooh, Ross, or thank you for your service, Samuel.
Rah.
All right. So I always ask the question, is the question being, can you tell us a little bit about your childhood? What was Samuel Deeds like as a child?
Oh man, a hellion, if I can say that.
By the way, this is your platform. You can talk however you care to talk. So this is for you.
I was knucklehead. I mean, from the word go. Um, I thought I had a pretty traditional childhood until I met a lot of my buddies in the Marine Corps and realized that I had some other than a traditional childhood. My dad passed away when I was young. He had leukemia, passed away when I was 8. So raised by my mom, and I was the oldest, and then I have a younger sister, then a younger half brother, younger half sister that were all in the house. So there were 4 of us, and then my mom, and then she got married to my stepdad. But no, I mean, hunting, fishing, camping during the summer was what I thought was normal. I thought everybody did. Not the case, I guess. But I came from small town Maine, almost dead center in the state, Howland, Maine. Our population, I think, maybe got to 2,000 at one point in time, but I think it stayed around that 1,500 number for a while. My high school graduation, I think we had 78 to 83 people from 9 to 11 different towns. So very, very small communities. It was mostly logging or working in the paper mill, stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, lived with my grandparents for a while just to give my mom a break. Because again, I was a knucklehead. And then a buddy of mine, his dad owned an excavation business, and they brought me on, and I worked with them and kind of got the knuckleheadedness out of me, and ended up playing basketball and soccer in high school. And
now, what was your favorite out of those sports?
Honestly, I played basketball all 4 years, and then played amateur athletic union, AAU basketball, and then a couple different little smaller leagues. A summer league with the guys that I played basketball with all the time. Every Sunday after church, we'd go back to the gym and play. We had a janitor or one of the staff would come over, open the gym up for us on Sunday so we could play 2 hours of basketball. But I think I had the most fun playing soccer. We ended up going to the Eastern Maine Finals my senior year, and my senior year is the only time that I played soccer as a sport. So I had a lot of fun playing soccer. Great group of guys that I played with. I mean, I'm not taking anything away from the guys I played basketball with, but I think that when you have 12 guys, 13 guys compared to for basketball, compared to the 20 plus almost 30 that we had for JV and varsity, it just a different meaning, right? And then look, fast forward to the Marine Corps, you got a squad that's 13 people and your platoon's 30 something people, so it kind of equate to that a little bit.
Yeah. So let's go back. You kind of skipped over the education. Were you studious at all?
I paid attention in school.
Wow, that's a start. That's a good start.
No, only when it affected me playing basketball or soccer.
What was the GPA you had to have, or at least the grade?
So we had to maintain a C average.
A C. See, that's not bad to me. That's average. And if you want to be an average student, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, I failed. I think my 11th grade English. The teacher and I just didn't connect really well, and I had to retake it my senior year. And then it's funny, the teacher I had for my senior year was my freshman English teacher, which also happened to be my advisor. And we still stay in contact. I've taken my boys home to meet her, and she's one of the teachers that truly believed in me and my dream to become a Marine.
Oh, that's awesome. And what was it, in speaking of the Marine Corps, what was it that made you decide to go into the military, but more specifically the Marine Corps?
I knew at a young age that I wanted to go into the military. I knew that right away. I mean, you played Army or whatever it was, when you were a child. I mean, no one ever played Navy.
And there is that, right?
But, you played, running around with sticks or, cap guns or, paintball or whatever. But, coming from small town Maine, it's again, there was not much to do. You went and worked in the woods, or, you went to college to do something else. Again, I wasn't a great student. I didn't think college was a fit for me. I did automotives at a regional school for 2 years while I was in high school, and knew I didn't want to do that the rest of my life. So
that's fair.
The recruiters would come to school, and I'd watch how they present themselves, how they interacted with people, and more importantly, how they interacted with me. The only ones that really paid attention were the National Guard, because, they can take you at the end of your junior year, send you to boot camp, and then you start your guard stuff during your senior year, and then you go through your other training after that. And then the Marine Corps, they really answered a lot of the questions that I had. And I was a year older than everybody. We bounced around a couple times when I was younger, and the school systems didn't feel as though I learned enough my third grade year. So I got held back, which, looking back at it, I'm like, it's third grade. What do you really learn? Right.
Right.
But, and then again, the way they carried themselves, you saw the Army recruiters coming in with their fatigues on, and, it didn't look too professional. And I don't think I ever saw a Navy recruiter the entire time. But, the dress blues, and, they force you to stand up a little bit taller, just the way that they're tailored, the way that they're made.
Right.
And, and I was like, yep, that's it. That's what I'm going to do. So I did see a comment on here. He's from Bangor, Maine. He's from Bangor. No,
Stephen King.
30.
Stephen King.
Oh yeah, Stephen King's from Bangor. So I'm from 38 miles north of where Stephen King lives. Well, used to live.
Oh, pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So, all right, you get yourself into the Marine Corps, but just a little bit before that, how did you do scoring on the ASVAB for them?
It was
The
in the
pie
60s.
cat.
Yeah, it was in the 60s. So the ASVAB, my overall score was in the 60s. So if you look at it, it's considered an alpha. Anything over a 50 is an alpha.
Mhm.
49 to 31 is a Bravo. Anything below that requires a waiver. I was a recruiter, so I know this stuff now. But I wanted the infantry from day one, and the recruiter's like, yeah, we don't have any. And I'm like, it's the Marine Corps. What do you mean you don't
Right.
have infantry? So I was like,
And what year was that?
96 when I went through the delayed entry
Okay.
program.
Okay.
And I'm like, there's no way you don't have infantry. So I was like, you know what? I'll go across the hall. I'll get a bonus, and I'll go over there and get infantry. Well, not knowing at the time and knowing what I know now, some job specialties, MOSs, do close.
Yeah.
And the way you ship to boot camp is based off of when your school starts. So he called, I want to say it was either Nashville or Louisville, and found an infantry job, and they traded an infantry job for an aviation job, and off I go to Parris Island.
Look at you. I can tell you what I was told. Hi, Ron. Welcome. Thanks for being here. So I was told that in this state that I'm in, the average on the ASVAB, which kind of blew me away, was 30.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy with the education system. You'd think so. The ASVAB is based off of a 10th grade education, first and foremost. And I remember, I think it was 02 or 03. Not myself, one of the other recruiters sent a kid to Louisville for maps, and he scored a 1. I'm like, you get like 10 points just for filling your name and social security and bubbling that incorrectly. How do you get a 1? So you have to try not to do well. And then as recruiters, we have to pre-test everybody with just a smaller version just to see how they're going to do. Yeah, it used to be called the EAST, the enlistment screening test, is what we called it at the time. And then it was the ASVAB afterwards. But I think we averaged somewhere at the time, it was around a 38 to 42. It was the average back 01, 04. But you had those ones that for us, for the Marine Corps, the bare minimum was a 31.
Right. Yeah.
At the time, we really couldn't put anybody in on a waiver, just because, it was early 2001, and then 9/11 happened, and some waivers came up. We didn't decrease the people that we could put in, but some of those waivers did come up, or like a female. It had to be a 50 or above for a female, and that was it. And if they had like a 48, 49. The recruiting station or Eastern recruiting region would be like, yeah, we can get them in, and that score looked off their line scores. So if they wanted to go into the clerical side, like admin or anything like that, they had to have a good CL score. If they wanted to go to the mechanical side, they had to have a good MM score.
Right.
So it's, there's a lot of things that factor in, how you get your job for no matter which branch you're going into, not just the overall armed forces qualification test score.
Yeah. And, I remember when we took the ASVAB. Now, I'm a great deal older, and we sat there in high school, junior year, in the cafeteria.
Yep.
With our little pamphlet and our bubble, Scantron sheet, and went through it all. And I do remember getting calls nonstop because I scored exceptionally high on the mechanical and science. And to be truthful, I have no idea what I scored. I just know I was getting constant calls. And at that time, I was like, I don't want to, I don't know that I want to go into the military. So I started looking at the FBI and, requirements. And then I was like, yeah, no, they make you run too. Forget it. I'm out.
Yeah, but only for the academy. After that, training you have to do.
I know.
To maintain.
I know, but it's one of those. You graduate. You've already gone through this whole regiment, right? Your whole 12 years of schooling, and it was like, nope, I can't have somebody just herping over me right now. I'm just gotta find a different avenue, and it's led me to where I am today. So no complaints, but I definitely have, huge kudos and thank yous to people like yourselves who have served and volunteered, and even those who didn't have the option of volunteering that have been part of the military. So you get,
unfortunately, for like the school systems, if they're receiving state funding and they give a list to the colleges, by law, they have to give that same list to the recruiter. And it's the recruiter's job to contact every qualified or every male applicant, initially, every male applicant. Now, you can choose to call the females if you want. And, I used to do the same thing. We'd get a list from a certain school that had the ASVAB stuff. And, if we had a bunch of alpha females on the score, I'd call them and I'd try to screen them out.
Yeah.
But, I mean, when I first got out here on recruiting duty, again, early 2001, I think I was on for 2 per month. And then 9/11 happens. And then the Marine Corps decided to go from 196,000 to 210, 212,000.
Yeah.
And then as for an individual recruiter, I was on for 3 to 5 per month, depending on the month and the shipping quota and, all that stuff. But yeah, it became hard. We were a recruiting station of 4, and sometimes we're on for 16 to 20 a month for the entire station.
Yeah. And I'm fairly close, or was, to the recruiter that recruited my youngest Marine. And they talk about a great group of individuals, because there's a lot of stories, right? You hear from different people. And these guys were absolutely amazing. Of course, they sat us down and my son, but also allowed for my oldest Marine, who happened to be, he was still active at that time, and he called in because he's like, I want to make sure they're not lying, and so on and so forth, because he'd been through it. And they told it like it was. They didn't sugarcoat it. We knew what to expect. And then even they would even follow up. They'd follow up with us as parents. They'd follow up after he graduated boot, they followed up with him, checked in on him while he was in medical. Like the whole 9 yards. They didn't just say, okay, we're done with you, see you later. And that made me feel amazing, and just, gave a little bit more credence in my mind to the Marine Corps. So I was pretty pleased with that.
There's a lot of things that, I just got promoted to sergeant at recruiter school. So I was 3.5 years in at the time. Hadn't even finished my true first full enlistment, re-enlisted 6 months early, went to recruiter school. And, there's a lot of things about the Marine Corps I didn't know, like MPs, right? So there's 2 different MPs, and I didn't know that. And, there's your garrison MP and your field MP. And I put a young man in the Marine Corps for an MP. And when I checked back in off recruiting duty, he goes, you lied to me. I'm like, I told you what I knew, and it wasn't until I was probably already 2 years in. And I'm like, you know what? I don't know everything about the Marine Corps. And we would meet once a month as a recruiting station. So Paducah, Clarksville, Louisville, Cincinnati, Fairfield, the whole state of Kentucky. And I think there was, I don't know, maybe 50 of us recruiters or so. And I'm like, give me a business card, write your MOS on the back, and what your actual job is, because I'm not memorizing all that stuff. And I would put it on a pin board, and this kid's like, I want to be an MP. I'm like, hold on, let me make a phone call. And I would call who our MP was. And I'm like, hey, do you have time to talk to this kid? He wants to be an MP. And I'd hand the phone over to the guy or the girl that wanted to be an MP, and let that specialist talk to them, because I didn't know. and
Yeah.
it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't until probably 2 years in that I was like, man, I gotta let other people do stuff for me because I don't know everything. The book doesn't tell you everything. I mean, even if the book doesn't tell you there's 2 different types of MP or 2 different types of cooks, and then there's just so much, even within the infantry, there's so many jobs in the infantry, and a lot of people don't understand. So I, as the recruiter, can guarantee you your job field.
Right.
Like, so 03, right? So I was a 0311 rifleman. I cannot guarantee you that. I can guarantee you the 03 field, but I can't guarantee you're going to be a rifleman, assaultman, and mortarman, recon, or any of that stuff.
Right. Right. So let's go back and talk about your mindset. What was going through your mind when you pull up in the bus in front of Parris Island?
Ooh. I'd like to tell you that was my first time out of state, but it wasn't. My dad was originally from Maryland, so we'd go down every summer and visit my grandparents there, and then stop, in the states in between. Was my first time on a plane,
Okay.
and my first time that far south. So I went to boot camp I arrived at Parris Island on June 4th. So it was starting to get warm. It was already humid. And you arrive at the airport, and I can't remember if we came into Charleston, South Carolina, or we came into Savannah, Georgia. It was one of the two. I can't remember. And, they're all trying to feed you donuts and pop and pizza and everything at the airport, waiting for other flights to come in. So they got a full bus, and then they'd send the bus off. And I fell asleep. And the next thing I know, the lights are coming on the bus, and there's this dude at the front of the bus just yelling. I'm like, what is he saying? I'm like 3/4 of the way back in the bus, and it sounds all jumbled and murbled. And I just watched people move, and I just followed them. But yeah, it was a little chaotic. It was a culture shock for sure. My graduating platoon had almost as many people as my graduating class in high school did, right? Not counting the company, right? 6 platoons, and you're like, oh my gosh. And then I think we ended up graduating with 2 female platoons too at the end of it. But yeah, I mean, what a shock to the system.
Did you feel any nostalgia, any of that history when you stood on those yellow footprints of those who came before you?
It was so chaotic that no, not really.
No time.
And I was in the delayed entry program for close to a year, and I can't say, I'm not going to say I attended every function, but I attended most.
Explain, if you could, to the people. What I'm aware of what it is, but explain, if you could, what the delayed entry program for the Marine Corps is.
So the delayed entry program is a program where I'd take this year's graduating senior. I'd give it about a week after graduation, and I could put that incoming senior into what's called the delayed entry program. And all it is a program that the Marine Corps has that holds you until your ship date, until you graduate high school. And once a month they meet to do physical activities. They're supposed to teach you knowledge of either Marine Corps knowledge, or they're preparing you for boot camp is what they're supposed to do. I was very good at that as a recruiter. I wasn't very good at putting people in. For me, it was about the quality of the person, not the quantity. I could care less how many people I put in. There were months that I didn't write a contract and I got in trouble for it. And I really don't care. Even to this day, I don't care. I only truly regret putting one person in of the however many contracts I put in. And that's because he made my life a freaking living hell. The last week before he's supposed to ship to boot camp, he changes his last name, and I have to do the package all over again and background check and everything else on the kid. But that's neither here nor there. But yeah, the delayed entry program is a program designed to help get young men and women prepared for recruit training. And it's up to that individual recruiter to do that. And if they're not knowledgeable, even though they should be, on how to do physical training and get people to lose weight and teach them to build muscle at the same time, or use the correct muscle when they're doing the pull-ups, the flex arm hang, the crunches, or how to build their lungs up to run, they could set up the kid for failure.
Right. Now, unless I heard you wrong, can you clarify, when did the delay entry program start for somebody who's a senior in your area? Yeah.
So in our area, the graduating class before me graduated at the end of May or the 1st or 2nd of June. I signed my contract and was at MEPS on the 6th of June in 1996. So you can only be in the delayed entry program for a year before you have to do another package and all this other stuff, or they can do an extension. But yeah, for us, for the Marine Corps, you can be in the delayed entry program for up to a year.
And that's prior to graduation.
That's prior to graduating high school. And but yeah, so now if you, like, I had kids that graduated, we'll just say this year's graduates. If they walk into a recruiting station right now and say, hey, I tried college, it's not for me, I want to go to the Marine Corps, probably not tomorrow because it's the holiday, but you can do what's called a direct ship. And that person could go down there, take the ASVAB, take the physical, and as long as they pass both, they're off to Parris Island on the same day. Or that person can be like, hey, I want an admin job, but that admin job that school doesn't start until May, back up 3 months for recruit training, back up another, 2 weeks. And then that's when their ship date would be, to get them out the door. But
right. And you being previous recruiter, which is awesome. I get to ask these questions a little bit. So the pulleys. So explain now. Again, I'm aware, but those who watching today or even later may not know what is a pulley, and if you know where it came from, the term.
I do not know where it came from. The only thing I can think of is it's a pool of people that are getting ready to go to the recruit training, and the one person is a pulley. That's the only thing I can think of. We were never given the history of where it came from. But a pulley is somebody that is gone down, taken the ASVAB and the physical, passed that, and did an initial swearing in, and are waiting to ship to recruit training.
Excellent. I do remember the swearing in, the initial swearing in. I think was amazing. Warmed my heart watching him, take that.
Yeah, the oath.
And so that's excellent. Now for you go through the double hatches, right? The silver hatches. They set you down in little, tables. And did you finally start hearing what they're telling you?
Yeah, because once you go through those double doors, it's no longer a drill instructor yelling at you. There's actually, I can't remember what it stands for, but it's RLS. And they're recruiters that are assigned to Parris Island or San Diego. And they come in and they talk you through that initial paperwork of, okay, you're on Parris Island, you're on San Diego. This is how we're getting your pay started. This is how we're going to, put your active duty date or you begin the service date and all this other stuff. So it's more of a recruiter vibe, if you will. So yes, you understand what that is. But then when that's all over with, those people leave and the drill instructor comes back. And then you go and get your, strip all your clothes off and put on fatigues and running shoes. And then you go get your hair cut. And the entire time, everybody's yelling at you. And it's like, what in the world did I get myself into? And
you had an opportunity to call home.
Yeah. It was a one dial. If the person answered, great. If they didn't, leave a message. And there was a little Post-it or a 3x5 card that had a pre-scripted message right on the wall underneath the phone, and that's all you could read. And if you deviated from that, you got yelled at. But it was no, I love you, bye. It's like, oh, it's like, oh man,
yeah.
What am I in for? But no, I think that night, and when we finally, I say that night, early morning, when we finally laid our head down, the realization hit that, oh my goodness, what did I do? Because everything's so fast up until that point that you don't even have time to think. And when you get that 1 second to really think about what's going on, that's when it hits.
I kept waiting and waiting and waiting for that call. And I never got it. It never came. And so of course I called the recruiter and I'm like, look, I know if that bus did not make it there, I would get a call. And he just checks and he's like, yep, they made it. I was like, okay, thank you. And it wasn't until he graduated boot camp and was home for his 10-day leave. And he said that he was so it's a line of phones on the wall. And so he was in front of one and it literally had no dial tone.
Oh.
And so he's standing there and he's like, nope, just going to continue. And he doesn't say anything.
Yeah.
And so then he hangs up and like the drill instructors, at him, oh, no, try again. Yes, sir. And same thing, nothing. So it was like, he just said, he would pretend that.
Man.
I know. I was
Yeah,
like,
but you don't know what to
okay.
say. You can't just be like, hey, this one's not working, right? And then you're gonna get yelled
No.
at. And but if you go if looking back at it, if that would have happened, the drill instructor would been like, get in another line, and knowing that the phone's not working. And I'm sure, the next person, or if he just sat there and just kept doing it, they're just like, all right, you've had one. What are you doing? So
Exactly. They did tell him to try it again, but I think because he didn't say the phone wasn't working, he said nobody answered.
Yeah.
So but it took 13 weeks before
Before he
I
said
find
anything.
out. Now, granted, I was lucky enough to be able to get some letters from him and then message him.
And that was the hardest part when I had a mom, especially the mom. The dad's not so much, but the mom would come in. Hey, I haven't heard from X in a month. What's going on? I'm like, oh, do I really want to call the Paris Island? Because I know what's going to happen to this kid. I'd be like, hey, drill instructor, this kid's mom's not heard from him. Has he been writing letters? And if he has, are they all going to the girlfriend? Tell him to write his mom. And then he would yell the kid's name, and you hear him yelling. And, I say yelling, being loud, because the drill instructors want you to be loud, and be like, no, I've not, this recruit has not written his mom. And you will write your mom tonight. Yes, sir. Blah, blah. And then I'll be like, call the mom back. You'll be getting a letter here sometime this week.
Funniest thing, there is several Facebook groups for Marine moms. And one that was constantly going around was a drill sergeant and like with the meme. And it basically said, today's the day you write your mom, or something along those lines. Right. And it was like, we would constantly be putting that up. Nope. Still haven't heard, or whatever, and it's really traumatic for moms. And I don't know. I mean, dads, maybe not so much. I don't know. But, males tend to think, they're fine, and moms are like, no, give him here. We don't want to let go. And I can say that because it's really tough. It's really tough. But so you get into boot camp, you start getting into that, you get your bunk and everything. Tell us about how your boot camp went.
I guess normal. I mean, if there is a normal for Marine Corps recruit training, it was great for me. I had a bottom bunk, so I didn't have to worry about jumping up on the bunk and all that stuff at bedtime. And but no, I mean, I don't think there was truly anything that was out of the ordinary for us. It seemed like just a regular platoon. And even, as recruiters, we all go to school in San Diego, and we spend like 3 days with a group of guys that are going through recruit training in San Diego. So we get there before they wake up in the morning, and we just follow the drill instructors around for a couple days as they're training these young men and now women that are, so we know what to expect for them, to train them.
Right.
Properly.
I think that's excellent.
And I think some recruiters forget about that, or forget the fact that they were Marines and went through it too. It's just like, hey, just suck it up and do it. Which, sometimes there's that mentality. Sometimes it's not that bad. But if you're in any shape whatsoever, any type of shape, like physically, you're going to do well. All you have to do is listen. 100% of recruit training is listening to the orders that are given. And as long as you do it, intensely and fast, you're going to be fine. But there's always that 10% that are a little bit slower or aren't as physically fit, that kind of, I'm not going to say ruin it for everybody, but they ruin it for everybody. But also, there's a schedule that the DIs have to go off of. and it is down to the minute of, okay, you have to leave here at this time, you have to be here at this time, and everything is so precise that if you're there a little bit early, it could screw somebody else's platoon up.
Yeah.
So they will find things to make it a little less fun for you at recruit training, to keep you busy until it's your turn to leave or your turn to get to that next spot. And unlike San Diego, everything at Parris Island happens on Parris Island. The rifle range, the crucible, your couple days of field, of field training, your rappel, your gas mask, all that stuff happens on Parris Island. So you walk everywhere. Unless there's inclement weather, then they'll throw you on a bus and take you out. Whereas in San Diego, your crucible, your field training, your rifle range all happen at Camp Pendleton. So they all jump on a bus and take that hour and a half drive north to do all that stuff. And then they come back for graduation at San Diego. But again, I'll take Parris Island 100 times out of 100 and not have to worry about the hills of San Diego / Pendleton.
Now, how did you do that with the sand fleas?
It was too hot. We didn't have to worry about it. So I was there June, July, August into September, and it was too hot. We didn't get chewed up. The only thing I got bit by a black fly, like a big, like horse fly type black fly.
Mm-hmm. They took a chunk out of you.
It took a chunk out of me, and I smacked it. And the drill instructor came up to me. He was like, "They need to eat too, Deeds." Roger. And then I had to perform a burial for this stupid bug, and they're like, "Okay." And then I had to like play taps for it, and like they're on Parris Island, they're Marine, blah blah blah. And I was like, I'm like, this is so.
I
dumb.
love it. I love it.
But it's just one of those things. So that's one of those things that we can look back on and laugh about. And Willis and I do it all the time. Like we'll talk and be like, man, do you remember when this happened? Because we met at boot camp. We had the same drill instructors. We had the same everything for our first 3 years. Oh, wow. So yeah, there's a lot of funny things that him and I talk about. And a lot of it's offline, but. Yeah,
right.
That black fly thing is just one of those things. It's like, man, I had to bury a stupid friggin' black fly.
And though, you look back and you're like, you now have this really funny story that you can tell.
Yeah, and every single platoon has 1, 2, 3, 4, a bunch of those stories. Unfortunately, being blown up a couple times, some of those stories are no longer with me.
Right.
But, the cognitive functions of the brain don't allow it to be there anymore. But I just mean, there's so many things that happen there that were funny. I mean, we had a drill instructor. It was his first cycle, and he used to like to run across the foot lockers. And there was one day he was running across the top of them, and he just stepped at the wrong place, and the foot locker gave in, and he fell and took out like 4 racks and messed everything up, and we're laughing, we're losing it. And he ends up they moved him over to lead series. So at Marine Corps recruit training, there's lead series and follow series. So the lead series is there's 3 platoons over there, and follow series, there's 3 platoons. And they switched him out. And Sergeant Brown, he was probably 5'6", 5'7".
Oh, not very tall then.
Had real thick, Coke bottle glasses.
And he was doing that? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And he was intense, but man, running across the foot locker, and then he just took him out. They switched him out with Staff Sergeant Bell. He was every bit of 6'2", red hair, what was there. And man, mean. I'd rather have Brown back than deal with Staff Sergeant Bell. But what a change. And it was Bell's first cycle too. So they just switched them platoons, and Brown never ran across foot lockers again, because I ended up having a roommate that had Brown. He goes, yeah, he never ran across foot lockers. What are you talking about? I'm like, yeah, he learned his lesson with us.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Super Gringo says gingers, they'll eat your soul.
Oh, Bell definitely would eat your soul. Absolutely. I thoroughly believe he would.
That's nuts. So, all right. So you did the rappelling, and the Marine Corps has the gas.
The gas chamber.
Yeah. Let's see. And of course your hikes, your I'm just having a brain freeze with the sticks.
Oh, Pugil sticks.
Bugle sticks, that's
Yeah.
the word. And boxing.
They took out boxing the cycle or 2 cycles before me. There was no more boxing. I don't know why. It was never explained, but they ended up bringing it back for a little bit while I was on recruiting duty. But we had the Pugil sticks, and then we did line training, which is the precursor to the Marine Corps martial arts program.
Okay. Okay. And out of all of that, did you have something a favorite?
Honestly, drill. The all the physical
Okay.
stuff was like, man, okay, we're hitting people with foam pads, we're sliding down our bellies, or hand over hand on this rope or whatever.
Yeah.
But drill, and hearing that constant cadence of the feet,
Yeah.
right, and nobody it after we've already learned it, right, and we're more proficient. That just being able to march and hear that the footprints as you're going, the footsteps, and every step, and then moving with precision, and it just, that probably was my most favorite part of recruit training, other than graduation.
Yeah, yeah, which is a good one. My I think my son's a little warped and twisted because his favorite was the gas chamber. And
It's fun. It's different watching people freak out, and I'm not a big fan of bodily fluids, so watching all that mucus come out of people's noses and hang down by their knees and out of their mouth, I was like, nah, this isn't it for me. So I mean, even after I got into the fleet, I'm like, okay, let me go in the gas chamber, take my mask off, put it back on, show you I can don and clear it. Let me out of here. I didn't want anything to do with it.
yeah. Oh my gosh. All right. So where did you go then for your next training?
Yeah, so 13 weeks Paris Island, home for 10 days. It's a requirement for the Marine Corps that we come home for 10 days, get a nice little leave period. And then you go to the School of Infantry. For me, I went to Camp Geiger, which is part of the Camp Lejeune network, if you will. It's right next door for the most part, across the river. And I think we were there for, I think infantry training at the time was 9 weeks. So for me, that was my primary school. For anybody that's not infantry, they go to Marine combat training, still at Camp
MCT.
Geiger, still School of Infantry, but it's Marine combat training. And right now, I think it's down to 22 training days. And then after they're done there, they go to their formal school and they'll learn whatever trade they're going to do. But yeah, for me, it was nine weeks, I think, of infantry training, and then directly to Camp Lejeune, to 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines, where I stayed for, I don't know, roughly around 3 years. And then, like I said, re-enlisted, ended up on recruiting duty, stationed at Recruiting Station Louisville, Kentucky. Recruiting Substation Fairfield was my first RSS. And then myself and a guy switched, and I ended up with Recruiting Station Florence, Kentucky, and Permanent Contact Station Aurora, Indiana. So I had 5 schools in Indiana and 5 or 6 schools in Kentucky.
Wow.
So a lot of windshield time.
Yeah. And so that took how much time of your contract?
3 years. So it's so I spent three and a half years from the day I stepped foot on Paris Island to the day I left for recruiter school in San Diego. Was roughly about 3.5 years. And then I think was that 9 weeks, 10 weeks of recruiting school. And then from day one to my last day of recruiting is 3 years. So all of our B billets, our secondary billets, are all 3-year hitches. So recruiting, drill instructor, Marine security guard, combat instructor are all 3-year duties.
Oh, okay. Okay. And so once you did that, where did you end up going once you did your RA?
Yeah, finished recruiting duty, and then right back to Camp Lejeune to 3rd Battalion, 8th Marines. I was there for, I think I checked in on a Wednesday. And then that Friday, I got sent over to pick up a class that was graduating from the School of Infantry. My battalion was gone. They were in Haiti for operations in 2004.
Okay. Yeah.
When the people tried to overthrow the government. And I was told, hey, you're going to pick up these guys. You're going to get the battalion area ready for when the battalion returns. Wasn't the case. I came in on Monday and they're like, hey, you got to take these guys to get their shot, their gear. You guys are going to Haiti on Wednesday. I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, well, we have cardinal knowledge. You've been into Haiti before. I was like, yeah, in 1999. It's been 5 years. What do you think I'm going to remember from down there? And a lot had changed. A lot. I mean, the two areas that we operated out of when I was down there in 1999 were no longer in existence.
Well, they had a
weren't there
lot
anymore.
of earthquakes, the major
That was after. Yeah, that was after. So that was
Okay.
2010. But it seems like the Marine Corps is down there like every 5 or so years for something. The first time I was down there in 1999, we were there for humanitarian support. So we were the security team for the humanitarian effort. And then when I went back in 2004, it was a peacemaking mission that became peacekeeping that turned into humanitarian.
Yeah.
And then came back. And then it was, instructor course after instructor course, and then running the battalion through it to get to prepare to go to Iraq in 2005. And we ended up actually deploying a month or two early to help facilitate the first elections in 2005.
And what was your mindset knowing that that's where you were going to be headed? How did you deal with that mentally?
So, September 11th happened when I was on recruiting duty, and I tried everything in my power to not put people in the Marine Corps so I could get rotated back to go into the fight because, I joined in 1997, nothing was happening truly. Right. And then 98, 99, 2000, nothing's happening. And especially being in the infantry, you train to fight, you train to fight, you train to fight, you train to fight. No matter what we're doing, nothing's going on in the world. We train to fight.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go do my job that I was actually, enlisted in the Marine Corps for. And unfortunately, the powers that be kept me on recruiting duty. So I want to say I was ready to go, but I mean, are you really ready to go and face whatever demon that is that, war, conflict, whatever you want to call it?
Yeah.
We train for it, but the dummies don't fire back.
Right. Exactly right.
You can simulate an IED, right? An improvised explosive device. But until one goes off near you and you feel that gust of wind come by because that fuel
percussion.
needs that air, you see it in the movie, right? So the explosion happens and the gust of air comes by the person.
Mhm.
It's real because that flame needs air to fuel it. And, when that first time you feel that, it's like, oh yeah, we're in the stuff. This is the stupidest thing I've ever done. Why am I doing this? But then you realize, that the people of Iraq did want to change. Is it the change that, we set forth in front of them? I can't speak on that. I'm not
Right.
intelligent to speak on that, but they wanted to change. And it shows by that first election when they had thousands of people show up and walking around with a purple/pink thumb that they had to dip in ink and put on their, voter registration card saying, yes, I want to voice my opinion.
Yeah.
And then that ink's still there 2 weeks later because it doesn't wash off very well. But yeah, I mean, I honestly only spent 67 days in country before I got sent home.
Did you get an opportunity to eat any of the local cuisine, or was it MREs? What did you have?
So we were stationed. My company was stationed at Abu Ghraib prison. Our
Okay.
Abu Ghraib prison is a huge compound, and inside the main walls of Abu Ghraib, there were like 4 or 5 other compounds. So if you're looking from a map, right, from the angel view, the whole right side of Abu Ghraib prison was the actual prison, whether it was an outdoor compound, the indoor compound with, the higher security detainees. And then the northwest corner was the compound that we were stationed out of. And then everything else on that west side was either medical, the dental, the army living. We had Marines that maintained the towers. Their housing was there. The chow hall was almost dead center of the place. So we had hot chow for the most part every day, except for when we went and operated out of the Iraqi National Guard base, and then it was MREs or K rations or something like that. But yeah, for the most part, it was a mix of everything.
Nice. Okay. Well, that's good, right? Not knocking MREs. I mean,
Oh, they're terrible.
they
They're
keep you
terrible.
alive.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, I think in Iraq we burned more calories than we took in, even if you're eating the entire MRE, just because of the temperature and
Yeah.
walking around with all the gear, and you're adding 40, 50, 60 pounds to you depending on what you're carrying. So, and then you're out there for a couple hours a day just walking around, then you come back in and replenish and then go back right back out again. So I want to say probably the first 3 weeks, I was the platoon sergeant, and then we had a staff sergeant that was the platoon commander, and we were out with every other patrol. So sometimes I'm out 3 or 4 times a day, or he's out 3 or 4 times a day, depending on what our mission was for the first couple months, doing presence patrols, just letting the community know that there's, I guess, new people in town. I mean, the battalion that we replaced had just gone through Fallujah 2, so Phantom Fury, and they needed a huge break. They lost a lot of Marines, and
yeah, they
we
did.
came in to take over their area of responsibility and help cover the first election. The main battalion was based out of Camp Fallujah, so we had basically everything from the west wall of Abu Ghraib all the way to, I think it was the Euphrates or the Tigris. I can't remember which one was there in
wow.
Fallujah. So we had a big area of responsibility.
And tell me a little bit about what the terrain was like there.
Sandy and flat for the most part. So yeah,
Exactly what you would think.
yeah. So where we were, I mean, it was weird. We had probably 6 groves of trees in our entire area of operation.
Wow.
I mean, being there January, February, March, it's the raining season, so it rained quite often. Very, very fine sand when it wasn't raining, and it was flat. There was little to no drainage where we were. There was a big lake, but I think it was mostly used for runoff and waste. I wouldn't go swimming in it.
Yeah, no, that wouldn't be fun.
No, not at all.
Oh, goodness. Okay, so then you come back stateside.
Yeah, so it was crazy. We were coming back from the National Guard base on February 19th, and it was raining. And if you've never been to Iraq, like I said, the sand is so fine that when it did get wet, if you're a size 5 and you step in the dirt, which is now mud, now you're a size 6. And then you take your next step, you're a size 7. You take your next step, you're a size 8. And by the time you get across the field, you got a footprint like Bozo the Clown.
Right.
So it had just rained, and I decided, hey, stay on the hard ball. Just let's get back. I'm done with this patrol. Let's get back. So I made that decision, and I was probably, I don't know, me to the wall behind me, and an IED was detonated.
Wow.
Ended up sending one of my Marines home. He's still alive.
Oh, good.
Still has all of his limbs. I've tried reaching out to him a few times. I mean, I hold a lot of guilt because overly the decision I made ended his career. Whether he was going to stay his 4 or 40, he ended up having to get out. But we're all alive, and I think a lot of it's due. They put a brand new, probably about 4 or 6 inches of hot top over the road, and it kept us from taking more damage than we probably should have. And then a month later, I was involved in another IED attack on foot, roughly a 155 casing on each side of the road. And that one overly sent me home. So I ended up with a 1/3 open tibia fracture, 2 broken metacarpals in my left hand, shrapnel in my left forearm, my upper and lower left thigh, my right groin, a piece of my head, and a piece of my right hand. And then ended up, so I got back stateside. I want to say it was like March 27th, whatever Easter was that year. It was in March. Is when I got back home. They flew me from Abu Ghraib to Balad, which was an air base just north of Baghdad. And then from Balad to, they say we stopped in Kuwait. I don't remember a plane stopping. When I woke
You
up,
were on something good.
yeah, I was out of it. But when I woke up, I was in Landstuhl, Germany. They did wound irrigation and put pumps in and stuff there just to keep me stable, to rotate me back to the States. Landed at Andrews. The doctors from, at the time, it was not Walter Reed Bethesda. They were still separate. The doctor from Bethesda came down. He's like, hey, you're still going to be able to keep your leg. We're going to send you back to Camp Lejeune. I was like, hold on. What do you mean I'm going to be able to keep my leg? This was never a discussion. And he said, yeah, they did a good enough job in Iraq that you're good. You're going to keep your leg. I was like, yeah, I'm glad we're having that discussion after I'm already home. Thanks, Doc. But yeah, I got back home. Like I said, that Easter Sunday, stayed in the hospital probably another week, and then was released back to the battalion. Battalion was still in Iraq until August. So this is mid-March, late March. And then they didn't get back.
5 months later.
Another 5 months later, they got back. And probably a week or two before they came home, I'm like, you know what? I don't need these crutches anymore. And what a mistake. I end up refracturing my leg.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if I can tilt that enough. So there's that rod.
Oh, I do see that.
Yeah, so that rod was in my leg.
Wow.
They thought it had failed, and it did not fail. What failed was me not listening to the doctors. And I tell everybody now, listen to your doctor. They know best what your rehab should be. I was hard-headed. I didn't want my Marines to see me on crutches and all laid up. I was the platoon sergeant, right? But yeah, they ended up taking that one out. They did they reamed out the center of the bone, did a backwards ream to do a bone graft from the inside out, and put a bigger one of those in my leg. And it's still in there now. But yeah, to date, I've had 44 surgeries and procedures to repair everything. A lot of internal stuff that we didn't find until a couple years later, and then some shrapnel removal. I still probably have 20-ish pieces throughout my body.
Goodness, that's terrible that you had to go through that. But I'm so glad that you're here with us today to tell the story.
Yeah, I mean, it took me a while to open up. I guess when I first started realizing it, so the battalion redeployed in 2006, and we lost 17 guys in that deployment.
That's a lot.
I did not. The commandant at the time said, if you want to stay Marine, we'll keep you Marine. But if you can't perform the duties of your job, we'll find you a new one. And I ended up going over to work on the V-22. I say that in the same breath of I only have 3 hours on the aircraft. I guess I was a Marine and stressing people out, and they're working on $83 million aircraft. So I got pulled upstairs to work with the sergeant major as the squadron gunny, taking care of the medical, the dental, all the things that, a company gunny would do on the ground side, I was doing on the air side. But they redeployed, and we lost 8 my first deployment. So 25 total in 2 deployments, to Fallujah and to Ramadi.
I'm very sorry. Very sorry.
But yeah, I mean, a lot of friends, a lot of mentors, 2 kids. Well, I say that a kid that I put in the Marine Corps when I was a recruiter, and then one that another recruiter from my office put in, but I helped him get where he needed to be to ship to boot camp.
Yeah.
And then a kid that I picked up from the School of Infantry in 2004 and deployed to Haiti with. So 3 that I truly knew.
Right.
And then, 2 great mentors, 2 great friends of mine that were Marine of Marines. And matter of fact, last weekend at Arlington, I was able to lay a wreath for Reese Across America on Gunny Ball's marker at Arlington.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. And I'll be sure, of course, to keep them all in my thoughts this Christmas too.
Yeah, thank you.
And because it's important. It's important to say their names. It's important to just remember them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there's, I mean, I've been honored to have a few, I guess, honors bestowed upon me. One of them, I had the 2013 NASCAR race at Indianapolis named, it was the Samuel Deeds 400. And in many interviews, I mentioned my guys that I served with. I threw out the opening pitch for the Cincinnati Reds here, and they're like, "Hey, we're going to do a jersey for you. What do you want? What's your number?" I'm like, "There's no number other than 03."
yeah, that makes sense.
That's the infantry designator. So
Yeah.
let's do 03. And then I got a permanent. Nope, wrong one.
Oh,
got a
I saw
permanent.
that one too. Oh
Or,
yes, that's a
you know.
good memorial.
So I don't put anything on my body anymore that I don't draw or come up with the idea. I've got a lot of flash that I went into the store and like, that's the one I want, and I don't do that anymore. Now it has to have more meaning than just I got this one to represent this deployment. I got this one to represent this deployment. So now everything that goes on my body, I draw or design.
Excellent. I know,
and it has deeper meaning too.
Yes.
The battlefield cross, dates all the way back to World War I. So,
and our oldest Marine veteran now was part of the 2-1 out of Pendleton, and you're probably aware they were the ones that during 2021 in Kabul,
yeah,
in Afghanistan, but he actually did the same. So he designed something. And I actually he sent it to me, and I was able to put it on a coffee mug for him.
oh, nice.
And yeah, that was really kind of neat to be able to kind of take what he was feeling and put into something that he could see every day, so that kind of made me happy that I could help in that regard.
Yeah. And I've connected with most of the families of the guys that we lost, 0506. Matter of fact, I'm good friends with one of the dads. The mom of the kid that I put in the Marine Corps still loves me unconditionally. He's buried here in Northern Kentucky. I go visit his grave on his anniversary, Memorial Day, his birthday. If I'm just riding by, I'll swing in. And a lot of times some of the family's there and they know who I am, and they welcome me with open arms. But then there's another family here in Northern Kentucky that holds me fully responsible and told me never visit the marker again. I'm like, that's not happening.
Right. Exactly.
But, yeah. So I get both ends of the spectrum here, and I see the family. I live in the area I recruited in, so I see the family every now and again. I see the side eye, I see the mumbles, and it's like, I know what they're talking about. Yes, I got him ready for boot camp. I wasn't in the battalion anymore. I wasn't in the infantry anymore. He wanted to be a Marine. He went through Marine Junior ROTC at his high school. That's all he wanted to do was be a Marine. I got him ready for and then we served to each other, so which was pretty cool. And but I think there's five or six guys that we recruited from the recruiting station here that I ended up serving with later.
Oh, I bet that was an awesome thing for them.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. One of them I ran into in Haiti. He's like, "Sergeant Deeds, what are you doing here?" I'm like, "I told you I was going to check up on you, when I get back to the fleet." And he's like, "Really?" I'm like, "No, numbnuts. I think I'm going to come all the way to Haiti to see you?" I said, "I'm stationed here. I'm stationed with you now." And then the look on his face is like, "Oh no, you're going to be my sergeant." I'm like, "No, I'm going to Kilo Company. I'm not with you." So that was a
nice,
a nice breath off of him. But when he did get in trouble, they'd be like, "Who's your recruiter?" And they're like, "Oh, Sergeant Deeds." Like, Kilo Company Sergeant Deeds? They're like, "Yeah." And I'd get called over, like, what about this guy? I was like, "Listen, I'll talk to him. You want me to talk to him? I'll talk to him." And it was more of a one-way conversation. But but I mean,
usually, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, young kids with money do knucklehead things, right? And so they need a little bit more supervision sometimes.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, let me ask you this then. How long was your recovery then total? Now, I know you said
it's still ongoing.
And so if they made you at 100, have they put you at 100%?
A year ago. So I retired in 2011, medically retired in 2011 at 70% per the VA.
Mhm.
40% for the Marine Corps. When I went through, so I went through the medical evaluation process, and my package went to the Navy and the VA at the same exact time.
Mhm.
When it came back, I had both ratings. And at that time, when it came back, I'd already been going through the process for 2 years. And I didn't know, right? And that's the thing. The counselors didn't know what to do. So if you're going through the med board process and you have another surgery, I told the board to stop. I'm having another surgery. 6 months of recovery, they start all over again. The word I should have used is pause. Because what they'll
Mm.
do is they'll make notes to that point, put a sticky there or whatever, however they do it. And then after my 6 months, I could tell them resume and they'd go again. So I ended up having 3 more surgeries during my med board process, which put me out to 2 years.
Wow.
And
Okay.
and my wife had already moved home. She'd been home for 2 years already, established our house. Matter of fact, where I'm at right now, had a 3-year-old, was getting ready to have another kid, and she's doing it all by herself. Oh, plus having a job and taking care of her grandparents. And I'm like, I just want to be home.
Yeah.
So by the time my package came back to my, is that my certificate of retirement, to my retirement date, 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
Wow.
But to leave the Marine Corps as a gunnery sergeant and to find something new.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. And I came home, became a domesticated house husband for a while. And my wife was not used to me being home. She's like, you need to find something.
How hard was that?
Uh, it was hard. I mean, I applied for a lot of security jobs, and they're like, "Yeah, we can't start you off at basic security guard." I'm like, "Why?" They're like, "Well, you have all these qualifications and this." I'm like, "I don't care about that. I don't care. Start me off wherever." I mean, I'm new in the company. I've never worked here.
It'd be
This,
expected, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Yeah, we can't. It's against our policy." I'm like, "This is the stupidest thing." So I did end up finding a security job working at the airport, not with TSA. Um, but doing screening for critical cargo coming from and going to certain countries, which was fun until I got written up for giving somebody a threatening look. Didn't say
Oh, those people.
didn't say a word to him. And I called my wife that night. I'm like, it was like actually morning. I'm like, babe, do I need this job? She goes, no. She goes, we'll go paycheck to paycheck until you find something, but no, we're good. I'm like, all right. I walked, and it ended up being my oldest son's birthday. And he's like, Dad, why are you home? I'm like, I'm home for good now, bud. I quit. He's like, on my birthday? I'm like, I don't know what day it is, kid. I've been doing this job for 6 months, 7 months. I'm just
Yeah.
ready to be home. And then yeah, I found something that's unique that I make money doing. It's a nice seasonal job, and I get to watch people jump out of airplanes for 10 months of the year, 11 months of the year.
Oh, I bet that would be fun.
Yeah, it's a good deal. I think we'll finish the year with somewhere around 138 performances. So we perform for NASCAR, IndyCar, college football. Matter of fact, we have a jump next Saturday at the Military Bowl in Annapolis. So
And do you jump?
I'm not allowed. I've got 2 pieces of shrapnel near my femoral artery, and that's where the harness rides. And the last time I jumped, I ended up spending 6 days in the hospital. So my
Yeah.
boss here at the house and my doctors are like, you're done, no more. I get to use
Smart boss.
this voice and all the things that the Marine Corps taught me through recruiter school and how to speak intelligently to people.
Mhm. Yeah,
to
that's
do-
a good thing,
Yeah,
right?
to do a lot of PR, to do some narrations, and then again, I get to make sure that the landing area is safe for the guys and girls that are jumping out of the planes, and I get to travel the world. I mean, since I've been on this team, I've been to, oh my goodness, Japan, I think 3 or 4 times.
Wow.
We went to China for 10 days and performed for the Chinese government. We went to oh my goodness, Grand Cayman and performed down there for like their 100 years of aviation or something like that a couple years ago, and then all over the states. So it's a good deal. It's fun, and it's I'm not gone every week. I get to pick and choose. Hey, we need you for this week. I'm like, no, I'm going on a cruise with the family. Find somebody else.
Right.
So, being that independent contractor and being able to be like, yeah, no, I need a break. And then I go 2 weeks. I go fishing 2 weeks every year, and I spread it out. And I'm like, hey, I need a reset. I need a break. And I take a break from the family. I take a break from work. I take a break from everything that's going on in my head, and I go fish. And while I'm out there on the water, all I'm thinking about is landing a fish, big or small. I just want to catch something.
Yes.
And
Do you have a favorite state or that you go to?
Man, I tell you, I went to Montana to Fort Peck and
Beautiful. Is it?
Oh my goodness, great. No light pollution. There's one light at Hell Creek up on top of the hill.
Yeah.
And now I know why they call it Big Sky, Montana. If you want to know, get away from the city in Montana, and it feels like the stars are right there, like you can reach up and grab them. But no, I go home and fish in lakes that I fished growing up. Matter of fact, I took my boys this past summer. We were jumping in New Hampshire, and my boss is like, hey, go home for 3 or 4 days before the race. So I got the rental car, went home, fished with my boys. We did some ATV riding, and they did the thing. They got to do the things I grew up doing up there. And my parents are like, hey, there's no fish in this lake. I'm like, well, where are you fishing? And they took me out in 8 feet of water. I'm like, no. We need like 20 to 30 feet. Drop anchor and we'll catch fish. And within a couple minutes, we caught fish. And I was like, why do I have to come all the way up here from Kentucky to show you where to fish and how to fish? You got a fish finder that tells you where the fish are. But no, I've been to Alaska a number of times, and there's nothing like being on the Kenai River, whether you're in a boat, whether you're standing on shore and fishing, excuse me, fishing for salmon. Oh man, it's something else. And then
I'd love
and
to
then
do
going
that
out
one year.
and then going out in the big water and fishing for halibut and pulling up some monster halibut. I took a trip, I guess it's been 2 years now. And we did a self-guided trip. So the lodge we stayed at had 2 boats, and your success or failure was based on you and your knowledge of fishing. And
That's fair.
we came home with 75 pounds of fillet apiece
Wow.
of a week of fishing.
Yeah.
And 90% of it was halibut. The rest was salmon.
Oh, that'd be so good. Fresh salmon, the best.
Yeah.
The best.
I got a half a cooler filled down in the basement still.
Nice. Going back to Montana and Fort Peck, had you ever fished for northern pike?
Yeah, so we have northern pike in Maine.
Okay.
So we have northern pike and pickerel. So pickerel is just a smaller version of a pike, right? It's basically the same family as walleye. I fish Lake Erie for walleye quite often as well.
Okay.
But I actually made the Miles City Gazette holding up a pike while we were out there. So we were out there with a nonprofit fishing, and they just decided to post the picture of me holding the pike. I don't know why, but yeah,
that's awesome though.
Yeah,
so it's out there for posterity, right?
Yeah,
For everybody to see.
It was fun. Just and man, the courtesy that the Miles City and all the way up to Fort Peck that the community showed us was just unbelievable. And,
yep. We lived there in Montana, and it is absolutely beautiful. And a lot of people don't like the pike because they call it a trash fish.
Yeah, it's slimy and bony, but man, you can flay it out, and that meat is just as good as walleye.
It is so. It's a firmer fish,
yes,
which I really like. And and there is a 5-cut fillet that you can do on them, which my husband learned when we were out there. But I actually had brought in, I think it was like 20 pounds, I believe, a 20-pounder.
Nice.
And it was like 20 pounds 1 ounce or something like that. And then my husband the following year had to beat me by 1 ounce. That's kind of how things happen for us. But because we kind of get competitive when it comes to hunting and fishing.
Yeah, I organized an ice fishing trip to Wisconsin one year, and they usually go out on the big water and catch the whitefish, whatever that is. I don't know. I've never caught one. The ice wasn't very good. And matter of fact,
Oh.
the day that we went fishing, they had a northern or a southern wind, and it broke everything up. And the Coast Guard helicopter had to come over from Michigan. They deployed like 3 or 4 hovercraft to go rescue people that were a mile plus out because the ice had broke up. But we did fishing in the back bay, and I think I had 8 guys with me. And of the 8, 5 have never ice fished before. And then all but 3 of us had never caught northern pike, and we caught some nice northern pike through the ice.
Yeah. I've
which
never
was
ice
fun.
fished, but
It's so fun. So fun.
But I caught that 20-pounder from shore up
Wow.
there at Peck. Yeah.
Yeah. I got one of my
And-
teammates that go to Canada every year, somewhere north of North Dakota or Montana, somewhere up there.
Mhm.
And the pictures he's shown me of like his grandparents and grandfather and everybody catching fish. I mean, huge northerns up there. I was like,
Yeah.
man, do I really want to go up there and fish though, and have to deal with Canadian government? And, I can catch that here. But
Yeah.
it's another experience, right?
Yeah. And we had gone, so there was an area called Crooked Creek, which comes off, it's part of Fort Peck, but it's kind of on the northern side of Fort Peck. And they closed down, unfortunately. There was a gentleman who owned a lot of that around it and had a marina there and stuff. And it was great just sitting there basically in a little bay, if you will,
Yeah.
to fish, and just loads of fun, walleye and crappie, and but the big ones that especially when they are mating, and
Yeah, when the spawn's happening.
ponds, when that's happening and coming up, because they'll eat anything. I mean,
Yeah.
and we would do not live; they were dead, but smelt was what we
Oh,
used.
yeah.
And a whole smelt, and we found some rigging that was just amazing that someone had introduced us to, and it basically went through the whole fish, and it kept it
Yeah.
at the right angle, and boy, those suckers, those pike would come in, and if you weren't quick enough and they didn't have a good bite, there'd be like nothing left, and sometimes you could see where it just like it's like it sucked everything off.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So nowadays, what would you say, since you've been through the military, Marines specifically, but what would you say to somebody who is interested in going into the military? What advice do you have for them?
Go to the Air Force.
Go to the Air Force.
Yep.
Okay.
So, and here's why. First and foremost, it's run more like corporate America, right? So it's gonna prepare you better for a job when you're done, like a civilian job. Secondly, most of the training is either accredited through the Air Force Academy or some other type of school that if you decide to go to college when you get out, most of your stuff's already going to be over with and you can just focus on your major. But yeah, I just the cost of living, I mean, your living period, like your dorms, right? Because they're not barracks, they're dorms,
Right.
are set up more of that college style. The opportunity to be stationed at more places around the world are there. I mean, the Army has a lot too, but again, you're going to be in jobs that some of them don't prepare you for the outside world, right? There's no place that's going to, you can be a tanker, right? There's no place
Right.
to be infantry, right? And a lot of those contractor jobs, now that Iraq, Afghanistan, and some of those other places are either gone or downsizing, or there's a small presence there, the need for the contractors aren't as great.
Right, yeah.
Even an MP, the security forces in the Air Force compared to an MP in the Army or the Marine Corps, the training's a little bit different, even though they say they're combined schools. It's that training after, when you get into your actual branch of service, that is what's different. And it's run more like a city police force or county police force compared to some of the other ones. All your EMT stuff, if you go into the nursing, you come out EMT basic, where I don't know if the Navy has changed theirs yet or not. I know a lot of our corpsmen were complaining because they were getting more field experience than the nurses or even some of the doctors at the hospitals. And, they didn't get EMT basic at the time. So there's just so many more benefits to going into the Air Force. And like I said, it's run like corporate America. My last two officers in charge on the Marine base were both Air Force guys. They were Air Force majors, both of them. They both started in the Army, and they became warrant officers in the Army. And then when they got commissioned, they got commissioned in the Air Force, and they flew in the Air Force. One guy, I'm like, sir, his name was Major Cawthorn. He goes, no, call me Uncle Tom. I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing any of that. I don't care about your call sign. That does not interest me in the least. Major Cawthorn is who you're going to be. And I mean, and it's weird. I mean, even in the Marine Corps, between the ground side and the air side, you hear rank and name.
Yep.
But you go over to the aviation side, and it's more within the pilots, but they're calling each other by their call signs. I'm like, how's this professional? This is not how this works. Yeah. And which is the reason I ended up being the squadron gunny for 5 years, and only getting 3 hours on the aircraft. But it's honestly, if I were to go back and do everything all over again, I would not change a thing in my path, because it got me to where I am today.
Yeah.
Everything, every single decision I made in my life got me to where I am right now. And I wouldn't change it. I got a great wife. We've been married for 20 years, together for 22 years. She's been with me through 2 years of recruiting duty, and then all my surgeries and complications and everything. Matter of fact, she just took me to the hospital last month. And she catches things before I know that it's happening, because she sees a change in me, and she's like, you got to go to the hospital. Two great kids. I mean, I say two great kids. One's a friggin' brainiac. He's a freshman in college, but he's in his third year at college, because he spent his junior and senior year of high school on the college campus doing all of his elective stuff through a program that we have here. He's super smart.
Nice.
Sometimes. Still makes stupid decisions. He's an 18-year-old kid.
It's it's the there's a term, the common sense is not.
Yeah. He's got a lot of it, but he just doesn't apply it sometimes. And then, the thing is too, so he was born after I got injured. And then after my second surgery, he was just turning 1. So we're learning to walk together. But all of my meisms, all of the post-traumatic stress crap, I can see him doing a lot of the things, like talking at people instead of talking to people, or like having a certain attitude, right? So all that stuff that I decided not to work on as, earlier on, after I got blown up, is I can see him doing it. And then my youngest is smart, just doesn't apply himself. And everybody's like, oh, that's just the way the youngest is. I'm like, you know what? I've got a lot of friends that have 2 kids, and the youngest seems to be that way with everybody. I don't know what happened, but no, they're both great kids. And I know a lot of parents say that, but they are. I don't have, so many compliments that people say, oh, your kids are so well behaved. I'm like, do you know who their father is? They hear and they just, what did I do wrong? Right. And even to this day, Micah, I could go out there right now and snap my fingers, and Micah would just be like, slow turn and look at me like, was that for me? But it's something that I've done since they were little, right? To get their attention. And they know if I snap my fingers that it's, oh, Dad's pissed,
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's coming. Something's coming. Yeah. So how was it transition wise? I know you didn't really have an immediate, or I guess you didn't have the typical transition.
Yeah.
And as far as resources go, it was one of those you just had to find out those on your own.
Yeah, so I knew that my retirement was pending, right? So I went to a separations and whatever the TAPS is. I can remember
Yeah.
what TAPS is called, but SEPs and TAPS. I went to a class and they're like, it's not 3 o'clock and it's not 1500, it's 3 p.m. You're not Gunnery Sergeant Deeds, you're Mr. Deeds. I'm like, yeah, right. There's guys that I work with that were in the military that I never served with that call me Gunny still to this day.
Yeah.
And I've been
Yeah.
with the team for 10 years. And I'm like, guys, this is gonna stop. Just that's not who I am anymore. But apparently that's who I'll always be, right? It's just one of those ranks that stay with you, like Colonel, right?
Yeah.
Or and I always joke that every single movie made about a Marine, it's a gunnery sergeant.
Yeah.
But all the Army movies are about privates. I don't know what that is there, but
Now I'm going to be going back and looking at them all.
but no, I mean, my transition again was a lot different. So I did the SEPs and TAPS, and they're like, "Oh wait, you're on a med board. You're probably going to end up getting retired." So they sent me to the retirement seminar, which was about a week long, and it's they talked a little bit, not a lot, about the VA, and I'm like, I don't need this. My stuff's already going through the system. I'm not retiring like him who did 20 years. So a lot of the stuff was not informative to me.
Right.
And then they touched on, like, they didn't bring in a vocational specialist, which I wish they would have. And I wish they would have focused more on how to convert your military occupation over
Yeah.
to civilian.
Yeah.
They're like, oh yeah, if you were an infantry unit leader, you can put frontline supervisor. I mean, they barely touched on stuff, but there's so many other things that you can put in there as a service member. The non-tangible things that you can't learn in a classroom that are instilled in you through recruit training, no matter what branch of service you serve in, up until the day you get out. There are things there that hold you higher standard-wise than somebody that's come out of college that has that degree. But if you got your degree while you're in, now you're truly head and shoulders above that other person.
Yeah.
Because you have life experience, you have work experience, and you don't have to pay back all that college debt.
Right.
So I mean, there's just so many things that I wish they would have touched on more that they didn't, and they may now. I mean, I've been out for 13 years, so that may have changed a little bit. When I first started going through the process, I was number one that went through the process I went through,
Yeah.
as far as East Coast Marines is concerned. So hopefully,
Well, I know they're
they've
still
refined
doing
that.
TAPS. I know
Yeah,
there's
they still do SEPs and
Yeah.
TAPs. I know that. I know they do the retirement seminar. Hopefully they have like somebody from the VA come in and talk them through how to properly file their claim, not just, hey, this is the intent to file, and then when you get out, this is what you need to do. Instead of or having some retired guy up there saying, hey, this is what I did. Well, guess what, buddy? It's changed from 30 years ago when you were in. The guy teaching my class retired 20 years before I did. Do you know how much has changed? I mean, come on. So,
Yeah.
and then of course there's other veteran service organizations out there that are willing to help, right? They don't talk about the VSO at all, or the veteran service officer that will help you with your claim. They don't talk about any of that, or they didn't at the time. And I wish they would have. I mean, the DAV is probably one of the best assets to use when you're filing your claim, because they know the ins and outs of the claim process.
And I've heard that from several veterans, actually.
Yeah.
So that's
mean,
great
you
advice
got-
for people.
Yeah, you got your military Purple Heart, you got your VFWs, your Legions, your AMVETs. My two VSOs here for my county are absolutely horrible. I had to go to Ohio to get a VSO. And he's like, hey, this is what we're going to do. And within a week, I had appointments, like actually going to appointments. But, we talked earlier, I got out with 70 and then fought it for 2 years, got my senator's office involved and got to 80%. And then I gave up. I got frustrated and I gave up, which is what the VA wants you to do overly. And then my wife's like, listen, you got to fight some more. So I got the VSO involved, and then I got to 90%. And that took probably another year and a half. And then when the PACT Act stuff came out, I'm like, yeah, I'm not dealing with it. And finally, my doctor's like, Sam, you need to, I noticed you haven't started anything there. I'm like, no, I'm good. So I filled it out. and I went to my appointments. And next thing I know, I'm looking at my stuff one night, my VA stuff, just to see what my pay. Matter of fact, it was this time a year ago, looking to see what the increase was for next year. I'm like, why am I making so much money? This is not right. Why is
Right.
it so
Yeah.
And then I looked at my bank account. I'm like, why is there so much money in my bank account? I was freaking out.
Mm-hmm.
And then I looked at my my VA stuff, and they're like 100%, and it got backdated to the date that the PACT Act was signed, so a year and a half. I was like,
Nice.
well, I went running upstairs so quick. My kid came out of his room, was like, "Dad, you okay?" I'm like, I think so. And I woke my wife up, and it was like midnight. I woke the whole house up. They're like, I've never heard you run that fast, especially through the house. But yeah, so I'm finally at 100%, and it's total and permanent, not individual unemployability. And it's just it's a huge weight that's been lifted off us here at the house. And
Yeah.
it allows me to do more things as a father that I've been wanting to do, and a husband that I've been wanting to do, and just haven't been able to, just because of the lack of funding. If you look at what I made as a gunny, and then getting out and going directly to VA, it doesn't even compare.
Yeah.
You have to get a job to provide, to be able to sustain what you had.
Yeah. And it's one of those you were talking about, looking and saying there must have been a mistake in that pay. So our youngest Marine was med boarded, and he got both the DOD and VA rating at the same time
Yep.
also. And they rated him through the VA at 70%. And so, he's expecting X amount each month, and he'd only been home, I think it was maybe 2 months. And he's like, oh my gosh, they gave me more than what it said I was supposed to get. And I said, then here's what you do. You take that money, you put it in an account, and you don't touch it. I'm like,
Yeah.
And then following like a week later, he gets a letter saying that they bumped him to 80.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So, but he didn't do anything more than that. So it was not expected. He when he was getting out, that's what they gave him.
Yeah. Somebody else did a second review of his
Mhm.
file. It's like, no, this needs to be here.
Yep. And so that was, but yeah, he was like, oh, look, and I was like, no, you don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Put it away. Because I've heard stories of overpayments and then them going back and requesting that money. And that was a fear. So,
Yeah. And that's what I thought. I'm like, don't touch it. Don't spend it. There's
mhm.
no way. No. Until we get this figured out. And then I looked, and I got 100%, and it was backdated. I was like, oh my goodness. So, and at the time I had a lawyer working on, stuff for my neck and my back. They're like, oh, it's not service related. I'm like, I had life threatening injuries that they were worried about, instead of worrying about my neck and my back. Well, and I'm like,
This was
we're
the
not-
attorneys?
no, this is the VA.
Oh,
And they didn't want to cover anything for my neck and my back. And I'm like, I got blown up twice. The first time I got thrown about 8 feet. The second time I got thrown about 25 feet. Oh, do you really think that it's not service related? Not to count that I spent 9 of my 14 years in the infantry carrying, 50 to 120 pound packs, carrying,
Yep.
the helmet and all this other stuff. And I broke it down and I looked up every single backpack system that I carried. I looked at every helmet that I wore. I looked at our vests, our flak vest up into this, and the flak vest with the SAPI plates. And I did all this stuff up, and I submitted it. And then I get told later, if you would have had a doctor do this, you've been approved. I'm like, why should I have to have a doctor do it? I'm the one that experienced it. So I was like, you know what? I'll just get a buddy letter. So I asked my guys that I served with, hey, can you write me a letter saying this is what we did? Yep, not a problem. And then I get 100%. So I didn't even have to file for anything, because now I'm, but it's still, it shouldn't have to get to that point.
it really
When
shouldn't.
I first came in, even up until even being after blowing up, if you go to medical, you're a sick bay commando, and you're a
Yeah,
subpar Marine,
Yeah.
which is not the case. You have to take care of you, because nobody else is going to take care of you.
Yeah.
It's your body, it's your health, it's your career. You make the decisions that are best for you. Don't let anybody else make those decisions for you. And that's where a lot of us as leaders screw up.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that's excellent advice and advice I wish you could have given my youngest Marine at the time because he desperately needed it being stuck
Yeah.
in medical for such a long period of time. So, Killian, welcome. Speaking of Marines, that is our oldest.
Yeah, we had him on the show the other day. I got to see his outrageous back tattoo.
Oh, yes. Wasn't that great?
It is. I mean, it's a great story. Matter of fact, he sent me the text with it in there. I'm like, I'm saving that, and I'm telling all my Marine buddies and my soldier buddies that this is what happened. It is.
Yeah, it was no lie. I absolutely no lie when I talked about that, and I remember when he did that too, and it was just the funniest thing ever.
I can imagine. He sent that. I'm like, please don't tell me that's you. He goes, that is 100% me. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yep.
What's the story? And that's how we kicked off the show with him, was talking about that. Not tell us about your service or anything like that. It was that tattoo. So yeah, it's pretty phenomenal.
So where do you see yourself or where are you hoping to be, let's say the next 5 years, 10 years?
Hopefully healthy. It's an ongoing struggle with traumatic brain injury, with post-traumatic stress, with the physical health side of it, with things that are out of my control, with the internal system not working the way it's supposed to. So hopefully, healthy on this side of the roots, but spending more time with my family. My first, I'd say probably 6 years on the team, I was gone at 100+ shows a year. And then COVID happened, right?
Oh,
so
yeah.
Everything shut down.
Yeah.
And being at home made me realize how much I missed at home when I was gone. So now the family and I take at least one cruise a year. Matter of fact, March 8th, we're taking off out of Port Canaveral on an 8-day to the Eastern Caribbean. Just the four of us, just to get away during my oldest son's college spring break, taking the youngest one out of school for a week. So that's where I hope to be, healthy. Maybe by that time, as much as I don't want to, I'm still having fun. It's not a job. Being done with the skydive team, 10 years of being gone as much as I am, a lot of windshield time. Friday, I go up to, matter of fact, tomorrow I'll go up, lay everything out that we need for the next weekend. Friday, I'll go up there, load it all up in the rental vehicle, and then make the 8-hour drive to Annapolis, stay the night, get up in the morning, go do the site survey of the stadium, set everything up I need to set up for the jump. And then we'll fold everything, put it all back in a rental car. And then Sunday morning, I'll make that same trip back. So, that happens this year, probably 40 or 50 times that I've done that. And it's, driving everywhere. I've driven to California and back multiple times. I've driven to Albuquerque and back multiple times, Florida and back, New Hampshire and back from here, so you're talking 30+ hour drives to I think my shortest drive this year was 5 minutes down the road from our drop zone. And it's still an hour for me to get to the drop zone.
Oh gosh.
Not from my house. So yeah, it's I've thoroughly enjoyed everything that the team has done for me. Health wise, it's given me a new sense of direction. It's given me a new purpose. Every single jump, we honor fallen service members and fallen first responders. So, and that was started by one of my teammates at a military bowl. I think it was probably my second or third year at the team. He's like, hey, we're going to dedicate this jump to this young lady who has family in Cincinnati. We go to church with her family, and she was a Marine pilot that was killed in a helicopter crash during training. And that following year, I'm like, why does this have to be only once a year? Let's honor somebody every jump. And we do. And we've been doing that for probably 7 years now, 6 or 7 years now. So every single jump that we do.
Wonderful. Absolutely.
And then,
wonderful.
So what we do is we take, I don't know if I have any close, but we'll take the picture of that service member print it off, and then just before the guys and the girls get on the plane, they hold up that photo. Somebody takes a picture of them as they're geared up, getting ready to get on the plane. They fold up that picture and they put it on their inside pocket. The inside pocket of our jumpsuit is right over our heart. So they'll jump out of the plane, do the performance, land on the ground. And then depending on where we're at, like we did one for a golf outing in Scottsdale, Arizona. And I think we had 6 Gold Star families on the ground, and we jumped with pictures of their loved one. And when we got on the ground, we gave that photo to them. But if there's if the family's not there that we're jumping for, we will turn to somebody in the crowd and be like, hey, this is what we do. This is who we jump for. Would you mind carrying them with you? And we educate them about that person and pass the photo off to them.
That's wonderful. I think that's amazing. And thank you for doing that and continuing to serve, right? I mean, that's really what you're doing.
Yeah. And I do a lot of work with some other nonprofits too. Nonprofits help me at the beginning with my recovery. And if I can just touch, one person and make a difference in one person's life, and that person can go talk about the nonprofit that I'm working with, how it changed their life and so on and so forth. We talk about that, 22 a day. And those of us that have been involved in that community for a long time all know that number is a lot higher than that.
Yeah.
And, most of them are the Vietnam era, and, they got a raw deal when they came home. And every nonprofit that I've chosen to work with and have allowed me to work with them. One of those groups is not just post 9/11. We honor every era of servicemen and women, and our Vietnam veterans need it the most. I mean, a lot of communities have seen how mistreated they were and started doing the Welcome Home Vietnam Veteran parades, but I don't go past a Vietnam veteran without saying, welcome home and thank you for your sacrifice. Because if it wasn't for them fighting for what they fought for, and, we wouldn't have got the proper welcome home that we got. I mean, I didn't get it. I came back on a stretcher and, but everybody that come back through, Bangor, Maine, with all those people sitting there lined up is all due to the Vietnam veterans.
Right. Exactly right. And I had that conversation with a Vietnam veteran not that long ago, actually. Because still, most are still very hurt by the fact of how they were treated, and I completely understand it. One of the things that I said though is, on the silver lining of that, if you can consider it as such, is that we now have learned how to give thanks for those who are sacrificing themselves and family and everything else to be there. And it's not easy. I can't imagine how mentally, that has really.
Well, and it's no different than Iraq and Afghanistan, right? You're facing a faceless enemy that will, capital will, use women and children to kill, maim, U.S. personnel, and it still went on in Iraq and Afghanistan, and it just wasn't highlighted in the news as much as Vietnam was. And sometimes you have to make that hard decision, whether it's a woman or a child, because at that point when they have a grenade or an IED or something like that, they're not a non-combative anymore.
Right.
No matter the age or the gender.
Yeah. And I think the hardest thing in my mind for a Vietnam veteran would be that the majority of them were not volunteers.
Yeah.
They were drafted. They had no choice. And here now, after that, it becomes a volunteer military, and it's thank you for your service, right? Yeah. And it was like, so I get it. I see it.
Yeah, but if you go back to World War I, World War II, in the ticker tape parades, right?
Yeah,
there's not been that. I mean, even during Korea, they didn't do that. It was, these guys and girls came home and disappeared back into their communities. More so, the Vietnam veterans, half of them didn't even come back in a uniform because of what they were hearing when they came back. So they truly disappeared into their communities. And it's not been until recent years that they've actually come up. My grandfather was a Vietnam veteran. I knew he was in the Army. I knew he was in Vietnam, but not until probably 10, 12 years ago did he start wearing Vietnam veteran hat, or he has the plate, or the plate accent around his stuff. And it's like, he's now proud of his service because, he didn't have a choice.
Right.
And what he did was honorable service, and you look at Nazi Germany. Yeah, it was terrible, but there are guys that got pulled into that and being fed up a propaganda that by their leader, that they were told that this is the way that it is. This is the truth. And they believed it until the end of the war, and they realized that's not the way it was. So you got all these guys now, even still today, being charged with war crimes. Yeah, they were guards at certain facilities, but they didn't have a choice.
Yeah, I've heard about some that have recently come up.
Yeah, I mean, there was a guy not too long ago up in Cleveland that they found was a guard at one of the concentration camps, and they took him back and charged him with war crimes. He was 80-something years old, and I get it. The genocide and the extinction, trying to extinct a certain group of people is completely wrong. But when you have a leader that's not in his right mind, at that back then, you really didn't question the authority. That like we do now. If we're told to do a certain thing, it's like, yeah, that's not right. We're not doing that, right? Because you're told from day one, if it's not a lawful order, don't do it. It wasn't like that in Nazi Germany. It wasn't like that in some of the other countries too. North Vietnam, it wasn't like that. You look at the kamikazes.
But you think also too the generations, right? You have that older generation that in order to eat, you had to do what you were told to do to get that paycheck. You worked extra hours and overtime and all of that stuff. And
the women went to the factories and worked while the men were in war. And then, and that's the reason that generation is the greatest generation. It has to do with nothing to do with the men fighting. It has to do with everybody that stepped up to fill in the job that needed to be done, not only to support the warfighter, but to support the economy back here in the United States. And that's one thing that people lose sight on. They talk about, the World War II veterans being the greatest generation. It's not just the veterans. It's the families. You had kids working in factories. You had kids doing jobs that men should have been doing while the men was off fighting.
Yeah. Oh, a prime example, look at baseball, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, that was, they started women's leagues.
Yep.
Because the men were off fighting a war. So, yeah. I mean, now granted, that's entertainment, but still, it was to keep things going and to keep the population engaged in something other than the fact that their husbands were overseas and may never be seen.
Yeah, I mean, COVID happened and everything stopped, right?
Yeah.
But NASCAR is like, hey, we're going to race X amount of races, no fans. And so no fans in the stands, and these guys are out there racing every week,
right.
For the entertainment piece, because it's that normalcy that we used to have that's no longer there anymore.
Right.
Even when football started back up in late 2020, and they're having bowl games with nobody in the seats. It's weird, but it's a sense of normality again. Yep.
And wherever they can fit that in, I think it does help with the transition of things.
For sure.
Well, anybody out there, if you guys have a question for Samuel, go ahead and get those put in the chats for me. So we've pretty much, I think, touched on everything I can think of. And is there anything that you just want to say or talk about?
Yeah, I think the biggest part is, there's a lot of service members out there that think that they're alone. And I will tell you, you're not. You're not alone in any way, shape, or form. There are people that have been through the same circumstances, if not similar circumstances that you have, that either it's the transition out of the military, whether it's the retirement way, whether it's the med board, somebody's been there and gone through it. What worked for me may not work for you. You have to find your own way. You have to find your own, direction and sense of purpose. But there are people out here that can guide you to that. There's one guy that I know who was having a trouble, and now he 3D prints suits,
fun.
like wearable suits.
Oh, wait, what?
He started,
Awesome.
he started with 3CPO. He did it all in his basement, 3D printed, sanded it down, painted it, and everything. Did a voice modular, all this, and now he has, I don't know, probably 10 or 15 different suits that he can wear. He's done Iron Man. He did War Machine. Now he's doing the robotics animatronics on stuff. He made a R2D2, a BB-8, and some of those other little droids. And
Oh my gosh.
so he takes them to the children's hospitals, or he does the Comic-Con stuff, and it just brings a smile to so many people's faces, right? And other people, it's building these wooden flags and challenge coin
right behind
displays
you.
and
Mhm.
whatever, just to get their mind off of whatever war is going on in their head. So I mean, there's something out there for everybody. No matter what, you still have worth, you still have value, and those like we talked about earlier, the intangible traits that you learned in your time in service is irreplaceable. Somebody out there loves you, and be here for them. If you can't be here for them, let somebody be here for you.
Yeah, yeah, I think those are just wonderful words. I'm not seeing any questions in the chats, but I want to say thank you very, very much for taking the time and coming on the channel and having that conversation with me, and with sharing that with everybody. It means the world, and in me just thinking out loud for my veterans, right? It means the world for me to have them hear it and know, there are people who have been in my shoes.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
you can't let the dark days win, And I said it the other night, you went through recruit training, whatever recruit training it is. Marine Corps, it's 13 weeks. The Army, it's 9 or 10 weeks. That's some of the hardest things that you'll ever do in your life is
Yeah.
getting those meisms out of you, right? To transition to be a soldier, sailor, Marine, airman. I don't even know what they call the Space Force anymore, or the Space Forces, right?
I don't know.
The
An
coasties.
orbiter.
Yeah, whatever you call yourself, whatever language is being used, and then you went through your formal school, and then you went through rather 2 months or 40 years in the service. People have been here, and
Yep.
you went through it. You made it through it. You can make it through whatever demons are creeping up on you.
Well, I appreciate that. And again, thank you. And everybody out there, thank you guys very much for being here, listening. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe. It's real important for us to know you're out there and you're watching. When we hit that 500 mark, I do have some giveaways coming up, some signed books in the back. So a lot of veteran books there that are signed, ready to go, and to help us celebrate that 500 mark. So I'm super excited about that. Also, at the end of the show, be sure to hit that thumbs up. Really would appreciate that, so we know you're out there. So again, Samuel, if you want to hold tight for me, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'll send you one of my personal challenge coins. It's a gunny chevron with my stuff on it for your 500th follower too.
Oh, that's awesome. I'd absolutely love that. And I know everybody out there, especially because we do have several veterans that watch, I think they'd absolutely love it. So thank you for that. So everybody, please have a wonderful Christmas. Be safe, enjoy your family, and just be thankful that we have that opportunity to do that. So, all right. Well, y'all have a good night.